The first gunshot shattered the glass wall of the penthouse, just seconds before Isabella Monroe realized the man she had mocked for months was the only reason she was still alive. The sound exploded through the candle-lit ballroom like thunder. Guests screamed. Crystal glasses crashed to the marble floor. Billionaires ducked beneath tables, while security guards scrambled in confusion. And in the middle of the chaos stood Isabella, the young heiress to a multi-billion-dollar empire, frozen in fear as a masked assassin raised a second weapon directly toward her heart. Then Marcus Hale moved. The quiet bodyguard everyone ignored launched himself across the room without hesitation. He wrapped one arm around Isabella and threw both of them behind the grand piano, just as another bullet ripped through the air where her head had been seconds earlier. The impact shattered portraits on the wall behind them. Isabella trembled violently beneath him, unable to breathe, while Marcus shielded her body with his own as if his life meant nothing. And in that terrifying moment, the rich girl who once laughed at his cheap shoes and worn-out watch suddenly realized the poor man she never respected was willing to die for her. Before we continue, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe kindness matters more than money, and if you believe people deserve second chances no matter where they come from. Stories like this remind us that the heart of a person is worth far more than the size of their bank account. Isabella Monroe had spent her entire life surrounded by luxury. Private jets, designer dresses, million-dollar vacations, and red carpet events were normal to her. As the only daughter of tech billionaire Richard Monroe, she grew up in a world where every door opened automatically and every problem disappeared with enough money. But wealth had built invisible walls around her heart. At 27 years old, Isabella was famous across New York for her beauty, elegance, and ruthless personality. Magazine covers called her America's golden heiress. Social media worshipped her glamorous lifestyle. Men chased her. Women envied her. Yet beneath the polished image was someone deeply lonely and emotionally distant. After her father survived a public kidnapping attempt 2 years earlier, he became obsessed with Isabella's safety. He hired elite private security to protect her 24 hours a day. Most guards lasted only weeks before Isabella fired them for being annoying. Then Marcus Hale arrived. He wasn't what anyone expected. Marcus was tall, broad-shouldered, and calm in a way that unsettled people. His suits were simple. His expression rarely changed. Unlike the flashy ex-military contractors Richard Monroe usually hired, Marcus carried himself quietly. No arrogance, no boasting, no need to impress anyone. What Isabella noticed first, however, wasn't his professionalism. It was his poverty. She noticed the repaired stitching on his leather gloves, the old truck he drove instead of a luxury SUV, the faded scar near his jaw, the fact that he never wore expensive cologne or designer brands. To Isabella, Marcus looked ordinary, and in her world, ordinary people were invisible. The first time she mocked him was during a charity gala in Manhattan. Dozens of wealthy investors filled the ballroom while photographers flashed cameras in every direction. Marcus stood near the entrance, silently observing the crowd. Isabella glanced at him before laughing softly to her friend. She wondered aloud whether her father had hired a bodyguard or a homeless veteran from the subway. Her friends laughed. Marcus heard every word, but he said nothing. That silence irritated Isabella more than anger would have. Most people either feared her or tried desperately to impress her. Marcus did neither. He simply continued doing his job with cold professionalism. Over the following months, Isabella's cruel comments became routine. She criticized his clothes. She mocked his modest apartment. She questioned why someone, like him, could never rise beyond being hired help. Yet Marcus never responded. What Isabella didn't know was that Marcus Hale had once dreamed of a very different life. Years earlier, Marcus had served in the military overseas. During one mission, an explosion killed several members of his unit and permanently injured his younger brother back home, after medical bills bankrupted their family. Marcus returned from war with trauma, grief, and debt that consumed nearly everything he owned. To pay for his brother's treatments, Marcus worked endless security jobs, long nights. Dangerous assignments, little sleep. Every dollar he earned went toward keeping his brother alive. Luxury meant nothing to him anymore. Survival did, but Isabella couldn't see any of that. All she saw was a poor man standing beside her in silence. One rainy evening, after a business dinner in downtown Manhattan, Isabella's expensive sports car refused to start outside the restaurant. Furious, she screamed at the valet while rain soaked her designer dress. Guests stared from beneath umbrellas as she lost control publicly for the first time in years. Marcus quietly opened the hood and fixed the issue himself within minutes. Instead of thanking him, Isabella sarcastically asked whether repairing cars was another one of his hidden talents for poor people. Marcus closed the hood slowly and looked at her with an expression she had never seen before. Not anger, disappointment. For some reason, that look stayed with Isabella long after the night ended. Days later, Isabella accompanied her father to a children's hospital funded by the Monroe Foundation. Cameras followed them through the hallways, while reporters praised the family's generosity. Isabella smiled perfectly for photographs until she wandered past one room and suddenly stopped. Inside, Marcus sat beside a young boy connected to medical machines. The boy smiled weakly while Marcus helped him build a small toy airplane from scrap materials. For the first time, Marcus looked different, softer, human, almost gentle. A nurse quietly explained that the boy was Marcus's younger brother, Liam. The treatments keeping Liam alive were expensive, and Marcus worked nearly non-stop to afford them. Isabella stood frozen outside the doorway, something twisted painfully inside her chest. For the first time, she realized Marcus's silence wasn't weakness, it was exhaustion. But pride prevented her from apologizing. Instead, she buried the guilt deeper and pretended nothing had changed. Weeks passed. Then came the night that changed everything forever. Richard Monroe hosted one of the largest corporate celebrations in the city after finalizing a billion-dollar merger. Politicians, celebrities, and powerful executives crowded the top floor of Monroe Tower overlooking Manhattan's glittering skyline. Marcus stayed close to Isabella all evening. Something about the atmosphere felt wrong to him. Too many unfamiliar faces, too many blind spots in security coverage. Years of military instincts screamed danger. Shortly after midnight, the lights suddenly died. The ballroom plunged into darkness. Screams erupted instantly. Then came the gunfire. Professional assassins disguised as catering staff stormed the event with terrifying precision. Security guards fell before they could react. Panic spread like wildfire through the crowd. Marcus grabbed Isabella immediately. She fought him at first, terrified and confused, until bullets shattered the glass windows beside them. Wind roared through the room as guests crawled desperately across the floor. Marcus moved with deadly focus. He guided Isabella through service corridors, shielding her body every second. Several times, he deliberately exposed himself to danger to protect her. At one point, an armed attacker cornered them near the emergency stairwell. Marcus engaged him hand-to-hand in brutal silence. Isabella watched in horror as Marcus took a knife wound across his ribs while disarming the assassin. Blood soaked through his shirt almost instantly, yet he kept fighting until the threat was neutralized. Then he grabbed Isabella's trembling hand and kept moving. For the first time in her life, Isabella felt truly helpless. And for the first time, someone protected her not because of money, but because they genuinely cared whether she lived or died. The pair eventually reached the rooftop, where a rescue helicopter approached through the stormy night sky. But another gunman emerged from the shadows before they could escape. The assassin aimed directly at Isabella. Marcus reacted instantly. He stepped in front of her. The gun fired. Isabella screamed as Marcus collapsed against her. Time seemed to stop. Rain poured over the rooftop, while Marcus struggled to remain conscious. Blood spread rapidly across his chest as the helicopter landed nearby. Isabella held him desperately, tears streaming down her face. The man she had humiliated, mocked, and treated like dirt had just taken a bullet meant for her, and he had done it without hesitation. For 3 days, Marcus remained unconscious in intensive care. The media exploded with headlines about the attack on the Monroe family. News stations praised Marcus as a hero. Social media flooded with admiration for the mysterious bodyguard who saved America's billionaire heiress. But Isabella ignored the cameras. Every day she sat beside Marcus's hospital bed holding his hand in silence, and every hour brought more guilt. She replayed every cruel comment she had ever made, every laugh, every insult. Every moment she treated him as less than human. Now the same man lay motionless because he chose to save her life. One evening, Isabella quietly visited Liam's hospital room while Marcus still slept. The young boy recognized her immediately from magazines but seemed surprised she was there. As they spoke, Liam revealed things Marcus never mentioned, how Marcus skipped meals to pay medical bills, how he worked double shifts despite severe pain from old military injuries, how he secretly donated money to struggling veterans whenever he could, how he never complained, not once. By the time Isabella left the hospital that night, she was crying harder than she ever had in her entire life, because she finally understood something devastating. Marcus had been richer than her all along, not in money, in character, in loyalty, in heart. Weeks later, Marcus finally woke up. The first thing he saw was Isabella asleep beside his hospital bed, her head resting near his arm. She looked different somehow, softer, real. When Isabella opened her eyes and realized he was awake, tears immediately filled them again. This time there was no arrogance left, no pride, no billionaire heiress pretending to be untouchable. Only a broken young woman desperate to make things right. Over the following months, Isabella changed in ways that shocked everyone around her. She stopped attending meaningless celebrity parties. She became personally involved in veteran charities and hospital programs. She created a medical foundation covering treatment costs for wounded soldiers and low-income families. Most importantly, she treated people differently. Waiters, drivers, staff members, security guards, strangers. For the first time in her life, she truly saw them. And through it all, Marcus remained quietly beside her, not because he needed money anymore. After the attack, Richard Monroe offered Marcus a fortune, luxury homes, and lifetime contracts. Marcus accepted only enough to secure Liam's future and refused everything else. That humility affected Isabella more deeply than anything, because Marcus never wanted wealth, he wanted peace. He wanted family, he wanted people to care for one another. And slowly, Isabella fell in love with the man she once looked down upon, not because he saved her life, but because he taught her how to become someone worth saving. Before we reach the ending, comment below with one word that describes this story. Kindness, loyalty, love, or redemption. Your comment might inspire someone else reading through the messages today. 1 year later, Isabella stood beside Marcus on a quiet rooftop overlooking the New York skyline where everything had nearly ended. But now the city lights felt different, warmer, hopeful. Marcus's scars remained, so did Isabella's regrets. Some wounds never fully disappear, but together they learned that healing doesn't come from forgetting the past. It comes from becoming better because of it. Isabella once believed wealth made people valuable. Marcus taught her that true value is revealed in sacrifice, compassion, and courage when nobody is watching. And as the sun rose slowly over the city, Isabella realized the greatest gift she ever received wasn't her father's fortune. It was the second chance given to her by a man the world once considered poor. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like these remind us that behind every uniform, every scar, and every quiet person fighting unseen battles, there may be a hero waiting to change someone's life forever. Marcus Hale disappeared 3 days after leaving the hospital. No goodbye, no explanation. One morning, Isabella arrived at his apartment carrying homemade soup and a folder containing the new veteran's foundation she wanted him to help lead. But when she reached the building, the landlord handed her a small envelope instead. Inside was a single key and a handwritten note. "Liam is safe now, thank you for everything. But people like me don't belong in your world." The words hit Isabella harder than the bullet that nearly killed her. For months after the attack, the media had turned Marcus into a national hero. Interviews, headlines, invitations, business offers, they came endlessly. But Marcus hated attention. Every camera reminded him of war zones, every compliment made him uncomfortable. And deep down, he still believed he was nothing more than a poor bodyguard standing too close to a billionaire princess. So he vanished before he could become another burden in her life. But Isabella refused to let him disappear. The old Isabella would have accepted his decision and moved on to another glamorous distraction. Yet this new version of her, the one Marcus unknowingly created, couldn't walk away from someone she loved. Because somewhere between hospital nights and quiet rooftop conversations, she had fallen completely in love with him. Weeks passed without a trace. Marcus changed phone numbers, left New York, and cut contact with almost everyone except Liam, who had been transferred to a private rehabilitation center funded anonymously by Isabella. But even Liam didn't know where Marcus went. At night, Isabella sat alone in her penthouse staring across the skyline, replaying memories that now felt painfully precious. The way Marcus always walked slightly behind her in crowds, the quiet smile he tried to hide whenever Liam laughed, the calm strength in his eyes during chaos, she realized something heartbreaking. Marcus spent his entire life believing he wasn't worthy of love, and she was partly responsible for that pain. Meanwhile, far from Manhattan's glittering towers, Marcus hid himself in a small coastal town in Maine. He rented a modest cabin near the ocean and worked repairing fishing boats at the harbor. The work was physical, simple, quiet, exactly what he wanted, or at least what he told himself. But peace never truly came. Every sunrise reminded him of Isabella's smile. Every evening reminded him of the rooftop where he almost died holding her. He tried convincing himself leaving was the right thing to do. Isabella deserved someone educated, wealthy, sophisticated, someone who belonged beside a billionaire heiress under flashing cameras, not a scarred veteran with trauma and scars he couldn't erase. But loneliness has a cruel way of exposing lies, and Marcus missed her more every day. Back in New York, Isabella threw herself into charity work to avoid the emptiness consuming her. She transformed the Monroe Foundation completely, focusing on wounded veterans, struggling families, and survivors of violence. People noticed the dramatic change immediately. For the first time, the public saw Isabella Monroe not as a spoiled heiress, but as someone genuinely trying to heal the world around her. Still, success meant nothing without Marcus. One stormy evening, nearly 6 months after his disappearance, Isabella attended a fundraising event for veterans. During the ceremony, an elderly retired soldier approached her quietly. He handed her a folded photograph. "This man saved my grandson overseas," the old veteran whispered emotionally. "Marcus Hale never talks about what he did. But men like him carry entire worlds on their backs while suffering in silence." After he walked away, Isabella stared at the picture with trembling hands. It showed a much younger Marcus carrying an injured child through smoke and debris during combat overseas. His face looked exhausted, terrified, determined. A hero long before she ever met him. And suddenly Isabella understood something important. Marcus didn't leave because he stopped caring. He left because he loved her too much to believe he deserved her. That night, Isabella boarded a private plane alone. No assistance, no media, no security team, only the photograph and hope. For weeks, she searched town after town across the East Coast, using tiny clues from military contacts and veterans Marcus once helped quietly. Eventually, the search led her to the small harbor in Maine. And there he was. Marcus stood on the dock beneath gray skies repairing an old fishing boat with grease-covered hands. His beard had grown slightly longer. His clothes were worn. He looked thinner. But the moment he looked up and saw Isabella standing there, the world around him seemed to stop breathing. Neither moved at first. Ocean wind roared between them while memories crashed silently through both hearts. Finally, Isabella walked toward him slowly, tears already filling her eyes. Marcus looked away first, because seeing her again hurt too much. Isabella told him she searched for months. Marcus quietly asked why. And what followed became the most honest conversation either of them had ever experienced. For the first time, Marcus admitted the truth about his fears. He confessed how poverty humiliated him growing up, how war destroyed pieces of him he could never repair, how standing beside Isabella made him feel small, broken, and temporary, like eventually she would realize she deserved better. Then Isabella shattered every wall he spent years building. She reminded him who stood between bullets and death without hesitation, who sacrificed everything for family, who protected strangers while carrying his own pain silently. And then, through tears, Isabella confessed the deepest truth of all. The poor man she once mocked had become the only person who ever made her feel safe. Marcus's eyes filled for the first time since she'd known him, because nobody had ever fought to keep him before. Nobody had ever crossed states searching for him. Nobody had ever chosen him over comfort, status, or wealth, until Isabella. The storm intensified around them as years of loneliness finally broke apart. Marcus stepped closer carefully, almost afraid she might disappear if he moved too fast. Then Isabella wrapped her arms around him tightly. And for the first time in his life, Marcus allowed himself to believe he deserved to be loved. Months later, the world was shocked again when Isabella Monroe announced she was stepping down from several luxury brand partnerships and moving away from Manhattan's elite social scene entirely. Instead, she and Marcus launched a rehabilitation center for wounded veterans and homeless families near the coast where they reunited. The facility provided housing, therapy, job training, and medical support to people society often ignored. The media couldn't understand it. Why would a billionaire heiress abandon glamorous parties for a quiet coastal life beside a former bodyguard? But Isabella understood something the world didn't. Luxury without love feels empty. And money without compassion becomes a prison. Marcus never became comfortable with fame, but slowly he found purpose again, helping others heal from trauma he understood personally. Veterans trusted him because he spoke honestly about pain instead of pretending strength meant silence. And Isabella stayed beside him through every difficult step. There were still nightmares, still scars, still moments Marcus questioned whether happiness could truly last. But Isabella never let him face those battles alone again. One winter evening, nearly 2 years after the attack that changed everything, the rehabilitation center hosted a holiday gathering for dozens of struggling families they helped support. Children laughed while snow fell softly outside. Music echoed warmly through the building. And near the fireplace stood Marcus watching Liam, now healthy and smiling again, decorating a Christmas tree beside Isabella. For a long moment, Marcus simply stared silently at the life in front of him. A family, peace, love, things he once believed were impossible. Then Isabella walked toward him carrying a small velvet box. Confused, Marcus looked around nervously as she smiled through emotional tears. She told him that he spent his whole life protecting everyone else. Now it was finally someone else's turn to protect his heart. And there, surrounded by wounded veterans, rescued families, and the people whose lives they changed together, Isabella Monroe asked Marcus Hale to marry her. The room erupted into tears and applause before Marcus could even answer. But he did answer, with shaking hands, with overwhelmed eyes. With a quiet nod that carried every emotion words could never fully explain. Years later, people would still talk about the billionaire heiress who fell in love with her poor bodyguard. But the real story wasn't about wealth or status. It was about redemption, about seeing humanity where pride once created blindness, about two broken people saving each other in different ways. Marcus saved Isabella's life that night on the rooftop, but Isabella saved Marcus from believing he was unworthy of love. And together, they proved something powerful. Sometimes the richest hearts belong to people with the least money. And sometimes the people we underestimate become the very people who change our lives forever. Before the ending, comment below and tell us, do you believe true love can heal emotional scars? Your answer might encourage someone silently struggling right now. As snow continued falling outside the rehabilitation center that night, Marcus looked around at the life they built together, the families laughing, the veterans healing, the warmth filling rooms once occupied by pain. Then he looked at Isabella, the woman who once mocked him, the woman who crossed the country searching for him, the woman who taught him that love is not about status, but about standing beside someone even after seeing their deepest wounds. And quietly, with tears in his eyes, Marcus realized something beautiful. The greatest miracle wasn't surviving the bullet. It was finally finding someone who made life worth living afterward. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Stories like these remind us that kindness can transform lives, and sometimes the people society overlooks are carrying the strongest hearts of all.